Recording in progress.
Hi, Michael. Are you ready? I'm gonna have Donna comes up, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar. This is Donna Chow, your host and moderator here at eLotus, the leading provider of continuing education for acupuncturists. If you are new to eLotus, remember to create an account today and receive a free 1 CEU course as a welcome gift. This offer is only valid for new accounts. Today's webinar is Intro to ABCs of Running a Practice presented by Michael Bizey and serves as a preview to what you will expect to see this weekend at Michael's full day webinars. Today's webinar will be from 10 to 11 a.m. Pacific time. And if you would like to join the chat, we ask that you set your chat preference to everyone so that we can all see what you are writing. And for questions, if time allows, please submit them into the question box in your Zoom control panel. Thank you very much. All right, guys, our speaker today is Michael Bizey, a healthcare entrepreneur with nearly 4 decades of experience and skill in acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine, functional medicine, clinical exercise, physiology, and nutrition. He owns and operates East West Healthcare, a 23-year-old acupuncture and wellness clinic with 3 locations in Wisconsin. All right, let's begin today's class and welcome Michael. Michael, will you please take over and share your PowerPoint, please?
I will. Okay, thank you. Now we got all the technical stuff done too. Okay, as she said, my name is Mike Bizey, and I have been around for a while, and that's why we're doing this presentation. So let's jump in here and see. I go by Mike when I talk, Michael when I write it, but either way, people can call me Mike. My purpose and why I would be doing something like teaching is basically to help people become the best version of themselves. This is for pretty much everything I've done, whether it is teaching or working in cardiac rehabilitation before I got into acupuncture, working with patients, and or even working with my staff. I learned something called so that, and if when you want to get to the bottom of the meaning of something, if you ask yourself so that, or ask the other person in the conversation so that. So I want to help other people. They can live the life that they were meant to live. See if I can move this out of the way. I don't know if I'm blocking your screen or not. In any case, so that they can live the life that they were meant to live. My hope is that something in this presentation strikes you and helps you be a better version of yourself. So something resonates with you with the presentation that I'm doing, so that you in turn can impact others in a similar way, and that this just carries out, and that the world is a better place because of what we've done. So why would you listen to me? As all of you are, I'm unique. We all have our story. The first time I got paid to put needles in someone was in August of 1998, 8/8/98. As a matter of fact, that chart is sitting there right behind me. And going back to that 8/8/98, that person came in and I did acupuncture, and that person never came back. So I was not real smart in the beginning. I promise you that many of you had a better start in acupuncture than I did. Some of you had a worse start, and we'll kind of talk about that. But your start doesn't determine where you end up. Your persistence determines where you end up. The second thing is that Tina asked me to teach, and she actually asked me a few years ago, and I just kind of took my time getting here. Taking Tina's advice has really served me well in the past, so I knew that eventually I would do a webinar for eLotus, and here I am. And I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've invested a lot of money, and the biggest part is I'm still here. So the fact that I've survived since 1998, which is 24 years, and we crossed over about 6 weeks ago into the 25th year of Eastwind, and Eastwind was me alone in the beginning, but I do have a team that I work with now. So I'm hoping that other people can learn from my mistakes instead of making them themselves. But raising children, you find out that sometimes we insist on making our own mistakes so that we don't take advice that well. More of why me. So what have I done in these 24 years plus? I've done about 75,000 treatments. I do have associate acupuncturists that work for me, and those 75,000 includes the work that they've done also. That's about 1.3 million needles. And it's about $6 million that I've collected through the 24 years. When I see that number, I go, wow, that's awesome. Where did all that money go? Because I don't have it. But saying that, I live comfortably. And I can say that 1.5 million went to employees. So this helping people be a better version of themselves extends not only to patients, but it extends to the people that I'm able to employ, because I've been relatively successful being an acupuncturist. And as you know, success depends on the way you define it. And basically, my definition is that I am living a life of integrity and doing things the way that I want to do them. And I'll explain that more this weekend. The other thing is I've paid about $240,000 to consultants for advice. I went to school at a time where the school was not that expensive. And so for people that are on here now, you're probably not going to want to hear this, but including my China trip at the end of my 3-year stint at the Midwest College of Oriental Medicine, I spent $25,000 on my education. So, and I did that working full-time and going to school full-time. So I was able to, I had some savings, and I was able to do that without taking out loans and such. But really that 25,000 pales in comparison to the 240 that I've continued to pay to other people to continue to learn. And I guess if you're, I'll send this message to you, if the money that you paid for school is troublesome to you, problematic to you, in order to move ahead, you're going to have to get past that and actually invest further in yourself. And honestly, the best investment that you can make, and an investment that you should keep making, is in yourself. And hopefully, this weekend is part of that investment. More of why me. We all have stories, and I had someone tell me, you'll never be as successful acupuncturist because you don't stick with anything. That would be an ex-wife. And how many people, we all have that, right? We all have somebody who didn't believe in us. I was listening to, I live in Wisconsin, not very far from Lambeau Field. And if you know anything about Wisconsin and Lambeau Field, that's where the Green Bay Packers play. And probably the most famous and infamous Green Bay Packer right now is Aaron Rodgers. And I was listening to him talk about when he was in college, he had a class where a teacher gave him an F in something that he had done or whatever. And he was a bright guy. He wasn't, the typical jock that didn't want to go to class type of a student who needed a pass or whatever. But she kind of viewed him that way. And he said, she said, what are you going to do with yourself after college? And he said, I'm going to play in the NFL. And she went, you'll never make it. And so even people who don't know very much about football know who Aaron Rodgers is. We all probably have somebody in our past who didn't believe in us. And his response was the same as Wise, oh really? Or the same as mine, oh really? Just watch me. And here I am 24 years later saying, just watch me. But you know what? I don't really care what her opinion is anymore. And then my mother's sister said, isn't acupuncture kind of a fad? Maybe he should pick something a little bit more stable. I have a similar statement to this, and I do love my aunt. I lived with her while I was in undergrad school when I came home on the weekends. But I had a similar situation. I had a friend from high school who I played baseball with, and we were both pretty good baseball players. I was the shortstop and he was the third baseman, and we were both all conference, and that was his senior year, my sophomore year. And he has a son, and he moved out of the area where I grew up, and he has a son. His name is Tom Lemieux, and he has a son that chased the baseball dream. And last year, his son DJ, and they pronounce it LeMahieu, when he played for the Colorado Rockies and now the New York Yankees, DJ signed a six-year, $90 million contract. And when he did that, I posted to Tom on Facebook, you probably should talk to DJ about getting a real job instead of pursuing this silly baseball dream that he has. So we all have things that motivate us, and your story is the thing that is going to carry you through some of the rough times when things don't go well. And guess what? They're not going to all of the time. So again, a quick history. I started in 1998, and I did have a day job at that time. I wasn't daring enough to dive in fully into acupuncture. I didn't have kids at that point yet, but shortly thereafter I did. So I was having one foot in my job and one foot in building an acupuncture practice. And I did that for probably, I don't know, a couple of years before. I remember the day that I quit the day job, and it was like, yep. Oh, the one before that was when I was no longer eligible for benefits because I wasn't working enough hours anymore. And so that was the first big step. It's like, oh my God, I'm on my own, no benefits, no insurance, none of that kind of stuff from my employer anymore. And then the second thing was reaching that point of letting go completely. I'm entirely dependent on the acupuncture now to support me and to make a living. And then the next step in the process was, and this was later on, this was probably about 2007 or 2008. And that was when I started hiring other people. And then you realize not only am I responsible to put food on my own table, I'm putting food on somebody else's table too. So it was late in 2008. So I'm about 10 years into practice at this point, when Bob Doan was piggybacked on Jimmy Chang. And Tina, I mentioned her advice. I was a Dr. Tan disciple early on in my career, and that was probably about, I don't know, 2007, somewhere in there, that I started following Dr. Tan. And I had a chat with Tina, and she actually bought me pizza. All right, well, she didn't buy it for me. She had extra pizza, and she invited me to sit down and have some pizza with her. And I was telling her that I viewed myself as a pretty good acupuncturist, but when it came to herbs, I felt like I was a short order cook. I needed a recipe. I needed to research. I had to look everything up. I didn't know really. I didn't really understand how to use herbs. And her response to that was, "Do you know who Jimmy is?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Jimmy Chang. Yeah, you need to study with Jimmy." And so by the end of that couple of pieces of pizza, she had convinced me that absolutely that I should be studying with Jimmy, and I had made the commitment. And then as I got up and walked away and thanked her, she said, "Oh, by the way, it's going to take at least a couple of years before you understand what he's doing and even begin to understand what he's talking about." And I was like, "Oh, thanks a lot." But again, that would have been, 2000 and whatever it was, 8 or 9 by the time I started to understand. But the point is, I was following Jimmy around at that point, and Jimmy was doing a presentation in Denver. In those days, we had to travel. We didn't have, Zoom. So I traveled to Denver to see Jimmy, and it was like, I'm going to travel all the way to Denver from Wisconsin for one day. Well, Bob was on Saturday and Jimmy was on Sunday, and I thought, well, I'll go to both. But Bob was doing something called How to Treat 60 Patients a Day in Fully Integrated Practice or something like that. And honestly, I had no interest in in treating 60 patients in a day. I was interested in kind of whatever techniques Bob was using and how he was organizing his practice, but I really had no interest. Well, the point is this, that Bob said, there's 3 things you need to be a successful acupuncturist. The first one was you needed a good acupuncture method that worked. And Bob said, Dr. Tan is one of the best methods. And that was the one he used. I'm going, yes, I got one. He said, the second thing is you need a fast way of diagnosing, and you need a good way to make herbs up quickly for your patients. And he said, and Jimmy Chang is a genius. And I'm like, that's 2. I study with Jimmy. So I got Dr. Tan and I got Jimmy. And he said, and 3, you need someone that teaches you how and can coach you on running a practice. And David Singer is a genius. And kind of the wind went out of my sails. It's like I'd heard of David Singer, and I had heard some, it's questionable, I don't know if that's the right word. I was resisting David Singer. And part of the reason was I had been in Amway earlier in my life, and somehow I had David Singer and Amway connected, or at least a similar kind of thing. Like I was going to be talked into doing things that I really didn't want to do, and I was going to be held accountable for things, and I wouldn't be able to be myself. So I resisted. But hearing Bob say this, I kind of opened my mind a bit. So I decided to go to a David Singer seminar in Chicago, which is not that far from my home, about 3 hours. And I wasn't going to join. I was going to take copious notes and get as much as I could for free, and then just implement on my own. So in June of 2009, I did my first David Singer seminar in Chicago. And I went with my plan of taking the copious notes, and 20 minutes in, I had to pick my jaw off the table because David understood things to a level that I had no idea. It was the psychology of dealing with patients. It's what your patients are thinking when they're coming through the door. How do you get connected with them? How do you kind of reel them in to understand what you're doing and commit? It's like you're not twisting their arm, you're helping them understand. And once they understand, they want what you have to offer. You're not twisting their arm. And I thought, all right, I guess I'm going to have to pony up, and I did, but that's a different part of the story. But anyway, when I sat down with their people, so that you sit in a seminar and they're doing, it's almost like a big infomercial. It's constantly, how do you address this issue? How do you get new patients? How do you do a presentation? Here's a PowerPoint that you can purchase from the back of the room. And you can make your own PowerPoint, or you can purchase ours, either way you want to do it. And it was a lot of that during the day. So they give you the idea of how to handle an issue that you had, and then they would have a solution, and you could purchase their solution, or you could do the work yourself. So either way, in any case, they would pull you out of this and bring you out in the hall. And when I went out in the hall, I sat down with somebody, and they introduced me to this thing called vital statistics for a practice. We now refer to them as key performance indicators, KPIs. But these are the statistics that, when you know these, they really reflect the health of your practice. And I'm thinking, all right. And so I didn't think much of this, but they said to me, how many new patients are you getting in a week? So this is the average new patients, average number of new patients that you get per week. So this is new patients. That's the first vital statistic. The second vital statistic is the number of treatments that you're performing, the average number in a week. The third vital statistic is how much money are you actually bringing in? And with these 3 numbers, they can really give you an indication of the health of your practice. So, new patients. What Dr. Singer taught, and it kind of sunk in, is that every business depends on new business of some type. For us, it's new patients. We got to have new ones coming in. That's what he always called new ones. And he said this early on, and I remember it: if you're not getting new ones, you're dying. And that's Dr. Singer. So what I learned is that every new patient you get as an acupuncturist is you pay for in some fashion. You pay to get that person through your door, whether it's through advertising dollars, whether it's through building a reputation and having goodwill, that would be effort. Whether it's through getting out in the community and doing presentations, whether it's getting online and doing this kind of a presentation, every one of your patients you're paying for in some fashion. They don't come through your door for free. I really wish that we were like some of our other medical professionals I've worked with doctors and so on. It's like they hang a shingle and within a few months, it's like they're full. So there's a lot of systemic maybe marketing that's going on, because what do you hear on commercials on TV? Ask your doctor, right? So ask your doctor if this drug is right for you. Ask your doctor if this exercise program is right for you. Ask your doctor if this is the right diet for you. Or, you know, the tagline at the bottom of everything is be sure to consult your doctor before proceeding on this. Be sure to consult your doctor before that. And as an exercise scientist, it always kind of gave me pause when they said, before you start an exercise program, talk to your doctor, because I can tell you after 15 years in cardiac rehab, how much the cardiologists and the medical doctors know about exercise. They know only what they're interested in for themselves. So if they weigh, you know, 250 pounds, it's like they don't exercise and they don't know very much about it either. And their tests are not very predictive of whether you're going to have a heart attack tomorrow or not. So I knew that. And then the other thing that you learn is ask your doctor about, you know, supplements and things like that. They don't learn anything about supplements in medical school. Any doctor that knows about supplements, it's because he was interested, she was interested in learning about it on her own subsequent to that. Any doctor that's interested in diet knows diets because they were interested on their own. They took an interest. They did not get much dietary education in acupuncture school. Between my exercise science background and my Chinese medicine background, I know that our dietary instruction, or the education we got in dietary concepts, far outstrips anything that people in medical school are getting. So the point is that there's a lot of society is told, it's a marketing thing out there that the doctors know you got to talk to them. So when they hang their shingle, people come. So where was I at this time? I was getting about 3 new patients a week. Okay, it's 2008. So how many treatments am I performing? But once you have a patient, you need to treat them and you need to get them to stick with the program, because I would think that most of you know, hopefully you're not trying to fix people with one treatment. That is a mistake that a lot of acupuncture makes. They throw the kitchen sink on the first treatment in, because you really want to get an impact on that patient so that, you know, they like you and they come back, right? Well, that's not why they're coming back. And I find that simplifying, and I'll teach you to simplify things, is much better, because this is complex to start with. And if you overdo, you will create greater complexity that you're going to have to try to simplify for them later. So once you have a patient, you need to treat them. The patient needs to understand that acupuncture is a therapy. And I didn't have a lot of pluses coming in as an acupuncturist, but I had this one because I had worked 15 years in cardiac rehabilitation. And I understood that after someone has a heart attack or heart surgery, they didn't get better in one treatment in one day. It's a therapy. It's a process. You watch people 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, 3 months out. You see how much they improve. You see that it's a psychological process too. It's an emotional process. It's a process of gaining confidence. It's a process of watching the body respond. It's a process of emotionally getting healing and getting through to a point where you've got your confidence back. You know your body is reacting the way you want it to. And when we treat patients, it's a very similar process, and they need to understand that. And those patients that have had acupuncture before, or their friend had acupuncture and they got better in one treatment, it's like, oh, thank you so much for creating that expectation, because I'm going to have to kind of get into your head and change those expectations, or this isn't going to work out very well. So where was I in 2008? I was treating 29 patients per week on average. So total collections. This includes all the money that you're collecting for everything that you're doing. So charging extra for an initial, initial treatment, if you're doing herbal consultations and charging for them, if you're charging for herbs, if you're charging for supplements and so on. All your total collections, everything you're collecting is in there. If you're selling books or whatever, that's everything you're collecting. It does not include money that people owe you and that you have yet to collect. So sometimes when you get into the third party game, you get into these situations where, well, I'm not going to bill you until I find out if your insurance is going to pay or not pay, and then I'll come back and bill you, and so on and so on. It's like you may say that you may try to count that money, but not until it's in your hands. You may count it when it's in your hands. That's what total collections are. Okay. And in 2008, I was making $1,900 a week on average. That was my collections. I had hit 100,000 the year before, and for a lot of people starting out, and I don't know how many people are on this webinar, and I don't know where you are in your practice. I want to get into more of that on the weekend to find out who's on and what's your level of experience and stuff. But when you're just starting out, that 100K number is always, that's the out there one. If you can do that, you're definitely a successful acupuncturist, right? That's a level of, that's a milestone. That's a level of success. And I had hit the 100K mark and then kind of fallen back in that 1 year. And that's one of the reasons I joined Singer, because I'd kind of plateaued at that point. And I thought I was a hot shot up till then because I'd gotten there on my own. But then I did some teaching at the acupuncture school for about 10 years, actually from 98 to 2008. And I found out that 2 of my former students were seeing 100 patients a week. And I'm at my, what was I at, 29? And that was humbling because I thought they were not more dynamic than I was, and they were certainly not better acupuncturists than I was. And so what was it? And I knew there was one common theme with the 2 of them. They were both David Singer clients. And I was kind of like, okay, that again. And that was one of the final straws to get me to join with Bob. Because you fight it, you fight it, you fight it. And finally, when you hear it from enough people, it's like, okay, there's something to this. I better go check it out for myself instead of just figuring it's Amway and running away. So, Dr. Singer, how am I doing? You get 3 new patients a week, Mike. Yes, I do. Your patients come an average of 9 to 10 times. I didn't tell you that. And some of my patients come more than that. And then they said, yeah, and some come less. That's why the average is 9 to 10. That's the way math works, Mike. I'm like, well, how do you know that? 29 29 treatments in a week divided by 3 new patients is 9.7. That's 9 to 10. And it wasn't necessarily buying that math through that conversation. I was kind of stuck there. Remember this kind of thing, because your patients end up doing this kind of stuff too. You're stuck there. And you can, when you see that, it's like, yeah, I'm still processing this. Are you sure that that math works? Yes, that works, Mike. You're seeing 9.7 on average. That's how long your patients are hanging with you, 9.7. I said, okay. And your collections per treatment are $65.51. I was selling a couple of herbs, I guess, because I think I was charging 60. Okay. So your case value is $633. Case value. Huh, what's that mean? When you get a new patient, Mike, they're worth $633 to you. Really? Yeah, it's the amount of collections divided by the number of patients, new patients that you're getting. Again, I'm questioning the math. I'm thinking, they made me take college math when I was getting I got a couple of master's degrees, and I got through a lot of it without a math class. But when it was the business degree, they said, you never took college math. And I said, yeah, I have 2 master's degrees and I never took a college level math class. How about that? They said, you have to take one now. And I'm thinking back to that and I'm thinking, does this really work? Trust me, it works, or I wouldn't be presenting it to you. When you take these numbers and spread them out over a year, how many new patients you get, how much money did you collect? Each one is worth whatever, right? it's useful information to know that your patients, when you get them, are worth $633, because it kind of dictates your marketing budget, because you got to know that you got to stay within certain parameters to spend on your market spend in order to get, the 633 dollars. And when you get to certain levels, and we'll talk about this kind of stuff on Sunday, but when you get to certain levels, you'll have people tell you, I can't market to you at a $633 case value, because you won't be able to justify the cost of the marketing, the spend on the marketing, the per lead spend that your costs are, unless you have a bigger ticket thing to sell that you're going to get more than that. And so we'll talk about those kinds of things. But how am I doing, Dr. Singer? Back in 2008, and said, well, this was subsequent. They didn't quite explain this to me at the time, but this was one of their presenters subsequently that I had worked with quite a bit. I'm trying to track my time on my phone here, because my computer screen does not have my clock on it. So I don't know where I am, and my eyes aren't good enough to see the clock on the phone over there. So I have my phone here, sorry. Subsequently, they laid this out for me, and they said, look, if you're just getting started, you want to be at level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1 is if you're just getting started with these concepts, okay? Level 2 is you kind of know what you're doing and you're focusing on these numbers. And level 3 is you're becoming kind of a pro at this. And the people that I was dealing with, they looked at new patients and retention and collections. And this is kind of a composite of something that Singer did. But after Singer, I was successful enough among the acupuncturists and Singer that I got invited to another thing called Physicians Business Solutions to medically integrate. And I'll talk about that a little bit. But that's where in the collections area, Acu only is practices that were running just acupuncture, and MedInt is medically integrated. If you're offering other services, and the medical integration was to go out, hire a doctor, hire a nurse practitioner, and then depending on your state, sometimes nurse practitioners can work independently in some states, but not Wisconsin. So offering additional services like trigger point injections or whatever you're going to do, durable medical equipment, other higher ticket things that you incorporated into your treatment plans with your patients would fall under collections. So Acu only or medically integrated, and I figured I'd put both of them there. So if you're at level 1, you're 1 to 3 patients. Well, I was getting 3. And so I was at the top of level 1. My retention was at the top of level 1 at 9.7, if you remember. And my collections were actually pretty good. I was collecting 65. So that was pretty good. I was a bit proud of myself with that. Level 2 is 4 to 6, and then 11 to 20 on your retention. I obviously was below on both of those. And then I was right around the 60 to 65. So I was up in the level 3 category with my $65 per treatment, but my total collections were not that great because I was only seeing 29 patients a week. So 7 to 10 new ones and retaining them for 21 to 30 visits. And when I first looked at that, and so some of you are looking at this and going, well, that's a lot to get people to stay that long. It really kind of all depends on the form of your practice. If you're really more of a wellness type of practice or people with chronic problems, you will find out, if you haven't found out already, that when you get past 15 to 20 visits, there are still improvements that are made at that point in time. So it really kind of depends on your patient population. But the way that I originally learned with Dr. Tan, it was much more of a, almost like a intermediate care clinic where people drop in with a problem, you treat it 3 or 4 times and send them on their way. Maybe if it was a little bit more complicated, you get up to like 10 treatments, but it was, he always said, don't milk the cow, don't milk the cow, don't milk the cow. Treat them and, and send them on their way. Now I work with a medical doctor who worked in the emergency room for quite a while, and he created a wellness clinic because of the mantra of treat them and street them, which means treat them in the ER and get them out of here, which is the mantra that he learned as an ER doc. And he came to wellness by through the doorway of, there's got to be a better way. This is freaking crazy of just, getting these people stable, writing a prescription and sending them out of the ER on their way. My practice is more wellness and chronic illness oriented, and I'll go into more detail with that too. So we end up getting more into the 21 to 30 visits or even more longer on some of the long-term patients. So again, how am I doing? Your patients come 9 to 10 times a week on average. And I'm like, okay, this was the statistic that they focused on to sell me on their services, because what they said was, this shows your patients don't understand what you're doing. I'm like, come on. You can tell that from all of this, because I still wasn't believing the math necessarily. It took time for me to digest this all and to actually accept. And to this day, I hung with Singer for 8 years until he retired, actually. I pick up the phone and call him now. And, I spend a lot of time with him. I got his private number. He knows me well. I love the man. Tough to do business with sometimes because he comes out on the good end of financial transactions. But when you understand that, he has done a lot for me, a lot. And I have run into acupuncturists who have like a completely attitude to say, he did more damage. I heard this statement, he did more damage to acupuncture than anybody else. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to start an argument or anything, but so people have varying opinions. It's like he taught people how to do business. We didn't really learn how to do business. And as a group, if you kind of look at to Hollywood and how acupuncturists are portrayed, we're kind of portrayed as weird, kind of hippie-ish. Basically, what's the word I'm looking for? We're non-threatening, And then if you look at the way chiropractors are portrayed on TV, it's like they wear like polyester suits. They're like used car salesmen. So I find that portrayal interesting, and I think that happens somewhat in society, because I don't know if you have experienced this in your travels, but every once in a while I'll have a patient say to me, "You're not like a chiropractor, are you?" And I'm like, what does that mean? Because it really depends on the context of that question. Do you mean I want to prescribe drugs or do things natural like a chiropractor? Because chiropractors and acupuncturists and naturopaths, I lump us together. We do natural medicine, that's the door to wellness, by the way. My exercise science, I did a lot of wellness work in exercise science. That's the wellness door. You know who doesn't know how to do wellness? The established medical system that we have. They know how to get a diagnosis and treat it. It's all protocol driven. They don't know how to do things if you don't qualify as being sick. They don't know what to do with you. I just want to be more well. Okay, well, eat right and exercise and see you in a year or whatever, right? So am I like that kind of a chiropractor? And it's usually, no, you want me to come forever. And the way that I usually respond to that is I will say, well, honestly, we do have patients that have come. I got patients that have come for multiple years. Because, I got balls and chains in the back, and I chain that on their ankle and I don't let them leave. And I said, no, honestly, they come because they value what we do and they understand what we do. That is where I got to from what Dr. Singer was trying to tell me on that very first day. Your patients don't understand what you're doing. In other words, they don't value your service because they don't get it. They don't understand it, right? That was my, What are you talking about? I can tell you 16 years later, what he meant. I didn't know that day, but it hung with me, right? Do you educate your patients? So my response to that was, well, do I talk to them about diet and stuff like that? Yeah, and I do what we tend to do when we're not trained to do something else, which means when I'm in the room with them putting needles in, I'm hanging out for a half an hour or 40 minutes and talking to them about this or that. It's all off the cuff stuff. And we do talk about diet sometime, but did I particularly give them dietary instructions? No, but you got to be careful with that too, because in some places you're not supposed to be doing that. There's a certain group of professionals that kind of believe in certain states that dietary advice should only come from them, and you need to be careful. And I know here in Wisconsin, our association kind of cuts them off when they kind of try to sneak those bills onto the floor of the legislatures and say nobody can talk to patients about diet except for those people, and they tend to cut us off. But in any case, the second thing with that I do want to say too is there are malpractice insurance providers, and I'll do the quote things, in our profession, and they're commonly used. If you call them and ask their attorney if they'll cover you, and usually when you ask these kind of questions, you get to talk to the attorney, if you're covered when you give dietary advice, the answer is no. So when you have malpractice insurance, you need to make sure that it is a fit for you. And we'll talk more about those kinds of things on Sunday. But so do you educate your patients? And so I talk to them off the cuff. It's like, do you have an organized plan? It's like, no. Okay. So you need to create a structure where your patient gets educated. Now, one of the things I've learned subsequent is pre-education is really useful, especially in today's world of social media and recording things. And if you want your patients to come through the door with a certain idea already in their head, certain understanding of who you are, what you're about, what you want to do, then you pre-educate them, and you need to have an organized system to do that. And I'll talk more about that too. But how am I doing, Dr. Singer? Well, you need to educate your patients, and here's the education they need to have. In essence, they've got a problem. So the Singer approaches that they have something called oh, this is terrible. I can't think of the name of it right now. It's the standard line. It's the standard conversation you have with the patient. Do you have a problem? Do you have? May I ask you a question? It's, do you have a health problem that concerns you? And most people do. But if they say, no, I'm pretty good, with my health is pretty good. Well, let me ask you another question. If you could, is there anything about your body or your health or your ability to function that you would change if you could? So what you're doing is engaging them in a conversation, and do they have a problem, and so on. So they have a problem. So most of the people that come through our door have a problem, right? And their problem is, the next thing they need to know is that problem that you're bringing in here, it's more complex than you think it is. Now, you can't just tell them that, but you gotta move them in that direction of, this isn't simple. No, I just got back pain. It's just been, I've been struggling with migraines lately, and they're getting worse. So it's more complex than you think it is, right? Because they're often coming in saying, get a couple of acupuncture treatments and I should be good to go. And if I'm lucky, magic with one, right? So the third thing you gotta make sure that they know as you're getting going with them is that you and your form of medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, are legit. This isn't like my aunt thought that this was a fad. This is not a fad. This is legit medicine. And you need to take a moment to make sure that they understand that. Okay, so you need to build some credibility with them. Then you need to let them know that I don't know exactly what's wrong with you yet, but I just might be able to help you. I've got to figure some stuff out, but I just might be able to help you, because I've run into people with these kinds of problems before, and a lot of the times I can help out. But don't go, oh yeah, this is not a big deal at all. We treat this all the time. You're screwing up the psychology when you make statements like that. Don't do that, okay? Even if you're minimizing it, don't do that, okay? They're not convinced to come to you yet, and they're not convinced that you're going to be able to help them. So the next thing is, it's going to take longer than they think it is, and you have to ease them into that, okay? So it takes a little time to ease them in. All right, so they have a problem in how you're handling this. You are always, always, always sorry to hear that. Singer is great at this. He basically would say, there's a time that you're going to have fun and that you're going to joke around. He said, when they're talking about their problem, I'm leaning in and I am always sorry to hear that. People should not have to go through that. I am sorry that you're suffering. That is not okay. It is never okay. And you especially don't want to be sitting there saying, I'm looking for symptoms I can treat. Oh, good, you got that one. Oh, good, you got that one too, because you let out the, oh, you got that. Oh, good. And it's like, no, it's not good. They're suffering, okay? You have to acknowledge the suffering. It's not good. It's good for you that you might get a patient, but no, it's not good. And you need to understand this, that decisions are based on emotions, no matter what you do. They're based on emotions, and then you rationalize them with facts. Reagan Archibald is a really good friend of mine, and some of you probably know who he is. He bought a Tesla a couple of years ago, and he talked about that. And it's like, he had all the reasons for, it's like, but he had to admit when he was all done, it was an emotional decision. When he went and went into the Tesla dealership or whatever, he fell in love with it. That was a totally emotional decision. And then he started doing the math, and it was like, well, I'm not sure what the price of the car was, but I'm sure it approached 6 figures. And he was, well, I don't have to buy any gas. How much money am I spending on gas in a year? And this, and this, and this. And by the time everything was done, plus they update the software, and it'd be like getting a new car every time I get the software, whatever. But he teaches me how to understand that patients make emotional decisions. All humans do. And then we back them up with facts once we've made the decision. We just want to gather the evidence that we're right. So your patients are doing that when they're deciding to work with you or not, right? So you've got to get them to experience the full emotion of the problem, because the problem really isn't that they're getting headaches. The problem is the way that the headaches are disrupting their life. You got to take them there, all right? They will minimize. They'll say, well, it's, you're getting headaches, that must be tough to deal with. Well, it's not really that bad. Don't let them do that. That is not okay, okay? In some senses, if you're really good at this, you have to catastrophize it for them. And if you think about our world, there's a lot of catastrophizing out there, so you got examples, right? So you really want to get to what impact does this have on their life? Let me ask you a question. You told me that you're getting migraines 3 times a week. Well, how often are you getting migraines? Once a month, once a week, whatever. And they'll tell you 3 times a week. Then you got to get put on your acting. 3 times a week? Are you kidding me? That is not okay. Boy, if that were me, that would be unacceptable. How do you live with that? May I ask you what impact 3 times a week? And it's like, well, then I get some minor headaches that aren't really migraines on top of that too. Wow, that is not okay. You know what? Headaches are common, but they're not normal. Migraines might be common, but it's not normal. Something is wrong. If you're getting migraines, something is wrong. And we need to get to the bottom of it. So what impact, can I ask you a question? What impact is this having on your life? Does this affect your ability to work? Do you ever get migraines at work when you're supposed to be part of a team, or you're supposed to be working on a project? So bring it into their life and have them feel the emotion of that. I found this to be a very important question, because I've gone through the process of getting fired 3 times. But that's why I'm an entrepreneur and not in, we'll talk about that on Saturday. But the point is, when you take it to this, let me ask you, have your headaches interfered with things enough that you're actually concerned for your job? Have they interfered enough with your performance? Are your employees having to cover your butt? Is the boss or your fellow employees getting irritated with you because they can't count on you? Are you actually afraid that you are hanging by a thread? You might be losing your job? Yeah. Let me ask you about this. Well, I muddle, oftentimes you get, I muddle through the day. I managed to muddle through to give, everything I got to my job. And then you want to find out if it's a job they really like or not, and you find out they don't. So let me understand this. You muddle through, you give your all to a job that you don't really like that much. What do you have left when you get home at night? Is this affecting your relationship with your family, with your children? I had a woman once tell me in the early days of digital cameras, she got her daughter a digital camera, was taking pictures, and there was a picture of her that she did not look very happy. And she told her daughter, delete that picture. I look like a witch. And out of the mouth of the babes, that 5-year-old daughter said, Mama, you always look that way. That's the emotion that is causing them to come in and get treated, because that woman said, why, my daughter really has that impression. And actually telling you this story, I can feel the emotion. My eyes well up a little bit telling you this, and the hair on the back of my neck stands up. The emotion is still there. It's like, oh my God. And this woman was neck pain. My constant neck pain is having my daughter think I'm crabby all the time. Oh my God. Once she saw that, that's the why. It's not the neck pain, that's the why. Now, getting that person to cooperate with a treatment plan is much easier than getting the person that comes and says, yeah, I get neck pain, okay? Or the headaches, whatever it is. If you do this well, they will get emotional. And if you treat infertility, you don't have to go anywhere near this far. They'll cry long before you pick at that emotional scab at all. They'll cry. You have to have tissue, and it has to be okay. You got to be good with that, all right? Because their decision to work with you is based on emotion. So now they realize they got a problem, and it's deeper than what they were anticipating, and they're feeling it. And now they got to be convinced that, you know why they're here now, and you need to do the so what with them. So if I were able to help you with this, if I could find a way to make that pain go away, then what would happen, and do the so what, so that you could get to that good place, right? And walk them to the good place emotionally, and where they could get. Okay. So, for example, you'd like me to treat your neck pain so that the pain goes away, so that I don't get fired from my job, so that I can do, so that I'm not crabby all the time, and I can enjoy my time with my kids better, and I can be a better spouse and a better parent. That's the why. And that's why that's why we do what we do. That's why we're treating the people that we're treating. If we're just treating neck pain, if we're just treating back pain, if we're just treating migraines, if we're just treating allergies, it's what are those things doing that are that are causing disruptions in your life? What are you missing out on? And like I say, your patients will minimize it. They'll say it's not that big a deal. Really. Okay. So you want to avoid concepts like qi and yin and yang, because you know how I got when they were, about the math, they'll get that way about qi and yin and yang. Unless they've done, like martial arts or whatever, then they're into that, but still, they'll get hung up. Do basic stuff like circulation, we understand. Blood, we understand. Okay. So you know that tissues work better when you get blood flow to them, like muscles work better with blood flow, joints work better with blood flow, organs work better. Imagine if your lungs didn't get a good flow of blood, and you had asthma, might that be a reason that the asthma gets bad if the blood flow to your lungs is not as good? What about the circulation to your brain? That brain fog stuff? Could that be because your blood circulation is just not as good as it should be? That numbness in your feet, might that be becoming because of lack of blood flow or whatever? So then, I've got a rubber band here. We'll wrap this around their finger while you're talking to them. And then just keep talking, and then have them sit there with their finger like that, and then forget about the finger and just keep talking, and then tell them that, what acupuncture does is you get these blocks in your circulation, and for whatever reason, the circulation to your lungs is not as good as it could be, and the circulation to your elbow is not as good as it could be, or your knee, or your feet, or your liver, or whatever it is. And then you just keep talking and talking, and all of a sudden you look over and go, "Oh, your finger's turning purple, isn't it? Look at that. That's an example that the circulation to your finger is cut off there. What happens when I take the finger off, or the rubber band off your finger?" And it's like, yeah, it turns pink again. It's like, and if you do it long enough, they'll actually have pain. And then they'll say, yeah, that pain went away. And it's like, you know what? That's what acupuncture does. We open up pathways of circulation, and I know it's vital substances, it's chi, it's blood, it's all the vital substances. But in essence, my explanation for what acupuncture does is that it opens up pathways that are otherwise not open. And then the vital stuff can get around your body and feed what it needs to feed. And then you modify it according to their complaint, and you show them how it's going to work. Then you basically say, look, I need a small commitment from you. It's not a major commitment, but a small commitment. Since acupuncture is a therapy, I'm not expecting to heal you in one treatment, to cure you in one treatment, but I do need to check how you respond to care. And I need to find this thing called the rate of response. And this is David Singer stuff, right? So it's 4 treatments that I want to do. So I'm going to sell you a package. I need to do your rate of response. I got to find out if you're a fast responder, or a medium responder, or a slow responder, or you're just not responding at all. Now, if you're just not responding at all, that doesn't mean you're excluded from me treating you. It means I'm going to have to scratch my head and do some figuring out. And we may have to make, we may have to do a little bit more experimenting before I figure out if I can really help you or not. But if you're a slow responder or a fast responder, then at least I kind of know what to expect with a number of treatments that it might take, to treat you, right? So we're going for a rate of response idea here, but what you're doing is you're trying to win them over during this time. So sell them a package that includes your initial exam and 4 treatments, and don't charge $20 for your initial exam. When you get into the Medicare stuff, Medicare pricing, and I do a lot of work with the VA, we'll talk about that on Saturday, is they'll pay $100 for your initial exam, but you got to kind of know how to do them. So if you're only charging like 20, or you charge 20 more, it's like, that's not the way this is supposed to work. And I'll explain that. But so your initial exam and 4 treatments, and then start dating them. And please, I'm talking metaphorically, do not date your patients. That's not a very good idea. And we'll talk about that on this weekend too. But the idea is that you have 4 treatments to convince them that you may have the answer for them, and to convince them to stay on past the 4. Okay. So at this point, I will see if you guys have questions. I do have some other things that we can go into, so I can either answer questions, or I can show you, like, so where does this take you, Mike? What do you think, Donna? What should we do? Is anybody there that's going to tell me which way we should go? Because I can't see the questions unless I can open up. Oh, you're talking in my chat box. What about the weekend seminar? Mostly psychology. There is some how-tos with this, because I am showing you some how-tos, but it is, I believe that the how of things, and I talk about this too, there at a certain point you get to this concept of who, not how. So who knows how to do something, and who can I mentor with that would teach me how to do that if you're small enough that you need to build your own. There is hands-on stuff. And I suppose, let's see. Well, let me go to the next screen then here, and back on this. Okay, so my first 10 years of post-Singer stuff, and I did some other things during this time, between 1998 and 2008, my total revenues jumped to $722,000. That annual average of $65,000. Okay, well, that wasn't, actually, that was not post, that was before. So that's the first 10 years I was in practice. The last 10 years have been 4 million on average of about 400,000 a year. Right now, that number, that is strictly acupuncture, and I will explain all of that in detail of how we did that, how we do it. My acupuncture is being done right now as I'm teaching you this. I've got an associate upstairs. My numbers now are looking at, I was at 3.8 new patients per week. I didn't really jump up in a lot with new patients per week. I didn't do a lot of work in that area, but I'm up to 4.5 in 2012. And we're at about 4 now, but it's 4 higher quality, and our retention is up. Our retention went from 11 in 2007, 10 in 2008, then 15, 18, 23, 24. Those go up as you understand what your patients are looking for, as you believe in your level of service. I actually had a patient come to me once who was also an entrepreneur, small business person. And early on in the conversation, I thought it was gutsy, but I still remember it. He said to me, "Should I tell you why your practice isn't bigger than it is?" And I was like, "Sure, I'm game. I'm probably not going to like what I'm going to hear, because you're going to criticize me, but okay." He said, "Because you don't believe in what you're doing." And I was like, "I do, kind of, sort of." But it made me think. And I thought, he's right. I do not believe in this to the level that I need to believe in it. And so what ends up happening is, as your level of belief in what you're doing increases, your retention increases too. It's very interesting. And then the annual collections is 112 in 2007, 97, 115. So the 97 was the first year of Singer. And it was in August of that year that I first started implementing this stuff. 115 the following year, 191, 253, 349. I stopped there because that's where I stopped strictly acupuncture, but we're on course for about 430, I think, this year. And that is strictly acupuncture. And remember, my first patient didn't come back for her second treatment. So wherever you are now between there and here, I hope to have something that strikes you and that I can offer you. Where we are right now, this is something called Blue IQ, and I'll give you some deeper dive stuff. Blue IQ is great. The Frogleys created this thing, this chiropractic family. I think it's Corey that runs this. There's 3 brothers. Their name is almost as weird as Buzzy, but Frogley. They're really good guys. In July, when I pull this is a screenshot, 276 patient units, 105 different acupuncture patients, 83 second units. And we started 3 new patients. We did 9 re-exams, 76 non-acupuncture units. That's a manual therapy. And we got a plus minus number of -1. And that basically means we did 105 the previous week, and there's 1 less scheduled for the next week. This is my way of following what the heck's going on, what my people are doing. Now $99 per visit is what we generate. 24 is the number of visits per start. So that's our retention, and our case value is up to $2,400. And there are ways to get that to be higher. It all depends on what you want to do. So that is the end of the presentation. My contact, Eastwind, or my website is Eastwind Healthcare. You want to look at that, you can email me at mbuzzy@yahoo.com. Donna, I think I use up all the time.
All right, let me bring McDonald's up now.
Okay, so where are we? We're done? Or where are we?
Great. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Michael. We appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us. If you enjoyed today's class, we would appreciate if you could tell your colleagues about it. Thanks again for joining us, you guys, and we hope you enjoy the preview to his 16-hour class coming up this week in ABCs of Running a Practice, which will take place September 24 and 25th. Registration is now open, so I'll see you guys there. Bye.